thank you to them. And my segue is going to be thank you to you for coming to this particular session. So I want to start off with sort of a quick introduction by saying, good morning. My name is Matthew Roche. I am a Principal Program Manager Lead on the Power BI Customer Advisory team at Microsoft. I've been on this team for about 4.5 years. Before this, I worked on Azure Data Catalog, SQL Server Master Data Services, Data Quality Services, and Integration Services. Before I joined Microsoft, I had a career as a business intelligence, data warehousing, and ETL consultant, trainer, and architect. And when I think about this, like when I say this out loud, everybody thinks, boy, this guy's got his act together, right? Like this sounds like a success story, and each and every one of us in our public lives, we show our successes. This is what I have accomplished, this is what I have become, but the thing that I realize is that the things that have made me successful are unrelated to the way that I present myself. So this is who I am today, but the path that I have taken is chaotic, it is unscripted and unique, because each one of us is unique. But today I want to tell you a story about how I got from where I started to where I am, and some of the lessons that I learned along the way. At the end of the session, I'm going to try to wrap things up, but at the beginning, what I want to say to you is the life that you lead, the struggles that you have day to day, and like the awful crap that you deal with every single day today, and all of the hurdles that you've overcome, every single one of these is going to give you a unique perspective and power that you can bring to your current job, to your next job, to your career path. And I'm hoping to bring in some of the things that some of the successes that I have failed into over my 25 plus years working in tech, so that you might be able to take some of this back, look at your own life and your own struggle in a different way, and apply some of these lessons in that unique battlefield that you're in. But for me, I'm going to start off in the beginning, where I grew up rural and poor in the middle of nowhere. So I grew up in upstate New York in the Finger Lakes region. So when I say rural and poor, all of our neighbors were cows. We never went without food on the table, but there were Christmases where the only things under the tree were hand-me-down toys and clothes from better-off relatives and friends or the church. So this is where I started, and my father, working his blue-collar job to support the family, he let me and my older brother know that work is the price that a man pays to take care of his family, to provide for his family. Like, this is literally the house that I grew up in. So like Bing Maps, boom, 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 boom. I grew up in this house. These were not actually cows, like we did have neighbors, but farms everywhere, right? So I was told explicitly and implicitly every day that work is just the price that you pay. It is the burden that you must do to earn money to provide for yourself and your family. Work is never something that you enjoy, and it's always a struggle. So this is where I started. And when growing up in this environment, I did not have a lot of opportunities. Like my older brother, very outgoing, extroverted, loved sports. So my grandparents would save up, and every summer he would go to sandlot baseball, like Little League for poor kids, right? And they noticed that I didn't want anything to do with this. So when I was 11, they found a non-credit, and these are all actual pictures from my actual childhood, by the way. These are all real me. This is me on a slide. So they found a non-credit computer programming course at the local community college. And I went in and I learned how to program basic, Fortran, a little bit of Fortran, a little bit of COBOL, a little bit of RPG, but mainly basic on these old NCR mainframes that were the computer lab at the community college. And oh my God, I fell in love. This was the thing that I was made to do. I typed something in and it did what I told it to. I was precise and articulate and it followed my instructions. It was beautiful. So for 6 weeks, I was in heaven. So like, in addition to the little Star Wars things that were on the desk in my room, I also had a notebook, because what I didn't have was a computer. So between the summer when I was 11 and the summer when I was 12 and the summer when I was 13, I literally had a spiral binder, and I would write programs in BASIC in a notebook, pen on paper, and then the next summer, I would get there as early as they would let me in and stay as late as they would let me stay, and I would type them in and make them work. And the thing that I saw, like in retrospect, is that this passion, like the fact that even though no one in my family, like immediate family at this point, had been to college, no one knew anything about computers, this was the thing that was for me. So I followed my passion, but I also needed to pay the bills, right? When I was 16, my parents were like, son, you're a man, you need to get a job. So I got a job working at a local regional drugstore chain. So Phase Drugs, kind of like Walgreens or Rite Aid, but all in the Northeast. And I worked there for 10 years. So I started off in 1986 making $3.35 an hour. We'll get into the departure, but basically I was a stock boy, I was a cashier. For a while, I was a front-end manager. I had keys to the stores so I could let people in. But after 10 years, I was making $7.15 an hour, barely keeping up with the increase in minimum wage. But the thing that I did was I showed up, I did what they asked me to do, I helped people. Like, this is the thing that I love about retail, and I love working with people that have a retail or food service or other background. Like, the old lady that comes in and says, I need this thing, and she's asking, where is it? But what she really means is, I need someone to help me find this and get it into my cart, to help me check out, and learning to listen both for the stated need, the unstated need, and sometimes when somebody's being a jerk, right? Like when retail, the customer is always right, but they're not always nice. So learning to roll with the punches, to make it so that you are doing the thing that needs to be done, even if you're not thanked for it, you're not rewarded for it. This was the lesson that I learned. And sometimes it's really a lousy job. So there was literally a time, like around the time in 1986, 1987, when these photos were taken, where I got a call, like somebody got on the intercom, it's like, hey, Matthew, up front to the registers for cleanup with a mop. And I don't know if you know what a colostomy bag is, but Christmas Rush, some older customer, their colostomy bag, which contains things that would turn into poop if they could, and are yuckier than that, it had exploded and gotten over the floor, the barriers between the cash registers, onto the shopping carts and so on. And I was the only person in the store, other than the managers, who wasn't actively running register and helping customers. So I spent 2 hours with a mop, trying not to throw up, cleaning up this mess. And the whole, you might have a crap job, but the thing that I learned here is that like sometimes work needs to be done even though you don't have the tools, the resources, you don't really want to do it, sometimes it needs to get done. And for a lot of the people that I've worked with in my 25 plus years in tech, if you've only ever gone to college and worked jobs where you know that you're the special person on the team, you miss this, right? So like this was the lesson, like the beginning of the lesson. But what about those computers, right? Like we're talking about tech, we're not talking about this crap. So when I graduated from high school, I started at the local community college as a computer science major. So I got a couple scholarships, that's the word. Got a couple scholarships, got a Pell Grant, was working the retail job to pay for books and the rest of stuff. But I dove in with both feet, took all the computer classes, all the other required classes, and on my third semester, I discovered sex and drugs and rock and roll all at once. And if I included any charts in this talk, which I'm not going to have any data visualization, but my GPA went like this. So to this day, I do not have a degree. I failed out of community college twice, and I failed out of a 4-year school once. So I never figured out learning. But what I did was I doubled down on the work. I tried to keep the education North Star. Like, I knew that I needed to go back to school. I knew that I needed to finish a degree. Like, I am not saying these are patterns that you should follow, but I followed my passion, even though it was the wrong passion to follow at the time. And if you've ever watched, anybody seen Trainspotting? I watched that movie once and I cannot ever watch it again because that was a little bit too close to where I almost ended up. But the thing that saved me is my wife. So while I was in the process of failing out of that 4-year school, I was the TA for a fencing class, and she was like this amazing star student. So feisty, short, left-handed, fast as anything, and I don't know how I ever got the ability, the bravery to ask her out, but I did. She said yes, and she's the genius. So she's got 2 bachelor degrees from 2 different schools at the same time. She's got a master's degree in pre-sedimentary or pre-metamorphic geochemistry, something. She's an expert. She's amazing. And the fact that I kept following my passion, regardless of what that was, it put me in the right place at the right time. Again, not a replicable pattern for success, but every single place in my professional career and the life that it has enabled has come down to being in the right place at the right time, where someone could see something in the way that I approach the world that made them want to, marry me in this case, but for the most part, wanted me to work for them or join their team. So my wife went to the University of New Mexico in Albuquerque to get her master's. I was literally along for the ride. She was going to be getting paid more to attend this school. The stipend that she got for her master's, she was going to be making more than I was making in my full-time retail job where I had been working for 10 years. So if I can get a job as an assistant manager at some drugstore in Albuquerque, we're going to be awesome, right? You're getting paid to go to school. I'll do this to pay the bills. We're even going to be better off. And there was an ad in the newspaper. Back in the day, LinkedIn used to be called newspapers. So there was a job ad for the New Horizons Computer Learning Center that had opened earlier that year in Albuquerque. They needed applications instructors. So stand in front of the room, tell a bunch of business people how to use Word, Excel, PowerPoint, Access, Windows for work groups, and the brand new Windows 95, right? And again, I don't know how I was brave enough to do this, because when I took a public speaking class in college, it was a required class, every time that I needed to stand up in front of 12 other students and talk for 3 minutes, I'm literally in the bathroom throwing up because I'm so stressed. But for this thing, it was computers, right? I want a computer job. And it was in there. I didn't have anything else to keep me from following that joy, so I applied. And they said, no thanks, we're going to hire this other person instead. And then 3 days later, after I had accepted another dead-end retail job, they called me back and said, we actually have 2 openings. We'd love it if you would come in. And over the course of a year and a half, I became their top-rated applications trainer, so mainly Excel, PowerPoint, Word, and Windows. And they came to me and they said, Matthew, we've got an opening for a technical trainer. We need someone to become a Microsoft certified trainer to teach these MCSE classes, so Windows NT, SQL Server, TCP/IP networking, and here's the deal. For every class that you need to teach, we will pay for you to attend the prerequisite classes, because in those days, Microsoft required every MCT to attend every class before they were allowed to teach it, and we will give you 1 study day for each day of class, 3-day class, 5-day class turns into that many study days. And at the end of those study days, you will have passed all of the certification exams that Microsoft requires for you to teach this class. And if you don't, we have the legal right, sign the contract, to fire you and make you pay back the full retail price for all of the classes that we sent you to, and to refund us for all of the paid class and study days, like prorated salary stuff. So I said yes. Like, I had a soul-searching talk with my wife, but for the next year or more, every night was studying. Every day was prepping, testing, teaching, and like for the most part, and I would not have admitted this 10 years ago, for the most part, the things that I was teaching, I had never done myself. Like the people coming in from Los Alamos National Labs or Sandia National Labs, like the two big tech employers, like, yeah, I'm running one of the biggest NT networks in the world, and Matthew, like little Matthew, is up there, like, I learned all of these details from this book and TechNet and this other book, and I was good at it. So the fact that I knew that I had to be up in front of a group of people being the expert where I had no true expertise, I was incredibly motivated to really have my act together. So any question related to what was in the book, I had that in my brain. And any question that I could think of that was one step removed from what's in the book, I had that in my brain too, because I had like a rigorous study process that I developed. And for anything else, I became confident and comfortable to say, if I don't know, I'll look it up and I'll get back to you. I developed a habit. The reason why New Horizons wanted me as an employee FTE MCT trainer, like technical trainer, was because at that point, if they were going to run an MCSE class, like one of these high-end classes, they needed to bring in a consultant who charged them over $1,000 a day. So, and especially in like 1996, $1,000 a day was unimaginable money for me. And I saw this guy, Jeff, as a role model. Like, I'd love to attend his classes because he wasn't reading the slides, he wasn't doing the stuff, he was telling the story and bringing everyone along with him. And Jeff started sitting in on my classes. So when he was in town, since he had a great relationship with the training center, he would come in and sit in on the classes, and some of the other people that worked for him would teach a couple other classes. And he eventually came to me and said, hey, Matthew, would you like to come work for me, leave New Horizons? I can guarantee I will at least double your salary. Let's look at like what it would mean. I have the lawyers to deal with New Horizons. So this is there we go. Here's the big thing. People notice great work. So I'm gonna keep circling back to this point throughout, and I wanna emphasize, this is my story, so I'm talking about my great work, but there's nothing special about me or the work that I'm doing. I'm good at what I do, and I have the confidence to say that when I mess up, like I own it and do my best to make it right. Like, this counts for a lot, but you're doing great work too. I was doing great work where people could see it, and the thing that I saw again and again was someone would come to me and say, wow, Matthew, that thing that you did was awesome. Come do this awesome thing with me. And that's the right type of conversation that you want to have when you're building a career. So Jeff's company, so here's the transition. Apparently, it's the first time I've done this talk, so I don't have the slides internalized yet. So Jeff came to me, had the soul-searching talk with the wife. Since Jeff had the lawyers to deal with the employer that I was leaving, we jumped in. And P.S. Romero, which was named after Jeff's wife, this is the name of the training and consulting company that Jeff was running, their basic business model was they had a stable of high-quality contract trainers, and they worked with a small number of exclusive training brokers that in turn had their networks of training centers, customers around the country and sometimes around the world. What this meant for me was I was in a different city every week, teaching a different class every week. So I would fly in on Sunday. Ideally, I'd have a chance to see the classroom before Monday morning. And then Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, I would teach NT networking. I would teach TCP/IP. I would teach Visual Basic 5. I would teach SQL Server 6.5. I would teach a bunch of different things. And very often, I would learn the things that I needed to teach when there was a customer that came and said, I need someone to teach this class. I was one step ahead of the bill collector, but I stayed ahead. And for a while, I was the vice president of training. Like, I was in my 20s, but I was a vice president. I was doing something awesome, right? So I kind of learned the work is important. Job titles really don't mean very much. And as we went forward, more and more people kept noticing the things that I did well. And because I was surrounded by great people, they saw that strength and put me in places where I could deliver more value to us, to me, to them, and to the customers by doing more of what I was doing. Again, not about me, it's about all of us. And then everything went downhill. So we were all getting burned out. It is soul crushing to be in a different city with different people every week. I found that when I got home, like my wife, who was like burning herself out getting her master's degree, like research, she would like talk to me about her problems. And I knew, because like 5 days a week, right? You tell me about your problems on Friday, they don't matter to me anymore. So I found I was applying this reflex to my wife. So she's telling me about her struggles and I'm listening thinking, all right, I'll keep her happy now, but I don't really need to care. That was a red flag for me. But thankfully, Jeff and the other leaders at PS Romero, they were getting burned out as well. So we decided we were going to open a training center. We're going to go up to Rio Rancho, right across the road from the big Intel fab, like north of Albuquerque, and have the best, highest end training center that the Southwest US had ever seen. So we really invested, great facility, great location, custom desks that we designed and built to work with the courseware that Microsoft provided, 2 monitors for every student, lots of space, and the best trainers available. And the one thing that we didn't take into consideration was the fact that the contractor that had committed to building out our space would be 6 months late. So by the time that space was available, we were bankrupt. We were being sued by every student that had paid for the training classes that we didn't have a facility to deliver. And like there was one time, I'm pretty sure the statute of limitations has passed, so I'm gonna say this. Like one time when we knew that they were gonna come to lock us out of the building the next morning, we had an all hands on deck moment where we went in and took all of the networking hardware and all of the computers that would fit in our cars, and we left with them because we couldn't fail. We had to keep going. And so what we did was we got together as a group with me and Jeff and Ed. We formed Cerebus Corporation or Cerebus Consulting, like similar business model, but with a stronger emphasis on consulting, less on training, and decided to ride the dot-com wave. So this is still late 90s, still learning every single day. But over the course of 3.5 years, we went from the 3 founders to a team of roughly 60. I was a manager for, like, depending on the time frame, for somewhere between 30 and 50 developers, where in these days, developers like ASP, a little bit of JavaScript, like we're building intranet applications for medium and large businesses. And for those 3.5 years, I was working on average 85 hours per week. So this is where I had my first breakdown, first and only significant breakdown. But I didn't know how to say no. There were problems that needed to be solved. So I'm at the office at 4. I'm working until 10 or 11 or what have you. My wife is finishing up her master's, and like pretty soon she's going to need me to be present as part of her life. One morning, Jeff came in. Like, you know, he would always come in and say, "Su casa." He would say, "Que pasa?" To which I would reply, "Es su casa," as if I didn't understand anything about Spanish, because I didn't. And so he came in and said good morning, and I just broke down and started crying. And he said, "I need you to go home. I need you to take a month off. Like, I'll figure out what's going on here. You go now. Don't answer your phone, don't check your email, no, you can't take your computer, I don't want to see you back here before next month." So being surrounded by good people, like, in theory, he should have seen this coming and kept me from reaching that point because he was the boss. But realistically, I was also the boss. I was a managing principal consultant and a development manager, and we were both in our 20s. So we kind of figured it out, but the thing that I found was that, like, in retrospect, I was the worst, absolute worst manager that you can imagine. I can be very intense even at the most relaxed of times, and those were not the most relaxed of times. And I found that over time, as I learned to forgive myself, the people that worked for me, that I was like the domineering, micromanaging jerk boss, they forgave me as well. And that, like, I don't know if this feels significant to you. I see a couple people nodding and smiling. In my career journey, this is a big learning. But the other learning is that I couldn't do that. I could not be a managing principal consultant, development manager, and partner, and be a dad at the same time. So in 2000, it's like the numbers, it seems like so long ago. So in 2000, my wife was pregnant, and we basically had a talk like, what are we gonna do? We can't do this and that together. What will it look like once the baby arrives and we have a new normal? And what we decided to do was we left Albuquerque, I left Cerebus, we moved back to the upstate New York area where both of our families were located, and I took roughly a 75% pay cut. I worked as a staff developer for a local Microsoft partner, like, basically a company doing the same sort of things as Cerebus was, but I was just a cog in the machine. I worked 40 hours per week. I billed 40 hours per week, and I went home and I slept with the baby. I napped with the baby. I was a dad. I was fully present, and it was basically the best time. We bought a house. We made a family. We're finding our feet. We're pregnant with child number 2, and notice there's no name up here. I don't want to name or shame anyone. So someone once told me, like, you share criticism in private, you share praise in public. The person running this company was losing it. So over the course of 6 months or so, as the economy started to sour, as the war in Iraq was ramping up, like all the the world was scared, if you remember 2003, we went from being salaried employees where everybody was like, pulling in the money and everybody billing and there's like a team making it all happen. He fired all of the salespeople saying that they were bad and he would do their job. And when the money kept drying up, one Monday morning, he announced that as of that day, retroactive through the pay period that ended that day, everyone that worked for the company, from the consultants to the receptionist, was now a commissioned employee with the commissions based on the profitability of the company, not the work that they were contributing. I see your faces. I had a very similar face. So this was not viable, right? So the worst case scenario was sticking around there. And I'd seen this coming. Well, I hadn't seen this coming, but I knew that I needed to be somewhere else. So I was out like talking with other local employers, and the Syracuse market, it's like 200,000 people in this area. There's not a lot of high-tech work in the Finger Lakes. So I had gotten a couple job offers that were all like at least a 50% pay cut from what I was making now, also not a great option. But what I needed to do was I needed to find a way out, and I decided that I was going to start my own company. So I didn't know what it was going to look like, but I knew that none of the other options were viable. And I went to the point of contact for the contract that I was working on through this employer. And I said, Carolyn, I'm sorry to put you in a tough spot, but I'm leaving this company as of today, like today's my last day. I will do everything that I can to make sure that there is a smooth transition, but I wanted to let you know personally, like, you won't see me again. I think things are in a good state. Bye and thanks. And Carolyn said to me, You come in on Monday, we will start paying you the hourly rate that we had been paying the previous employer. The only reason that we're working with them today is because we want you on our project. People notice great work. Like this sort of thing. I've got goosebumps saying this out loud. When I left Carolyn's office and went in the car, like I'm crying, like all of this awful thing that's happening, and here's the light at the end of the tunnel. And the thing that I found is this is a great, when you have the freedom to do the thing that you want to do, when you have someone who is supporting you and giving you the encouragement and the resources to move forward, it opens doors that you literally didn't know were there before. And essentially what I did was I started a consulting business. Like, keep in mind, business of one. Like there is like integral thought and memory. I thought this was a cool name, which I won't tell you the story about because we only have 20 more minutes. But I started doing more consulting and getting back more into training because I love training. I love being in front of a room. And people noticed great work. So in 2005, when SQL Server 2005 was in beta, like beta 2 was out there, there was a Train the Trainer course in Tampa, Florida. Basically, you go down, and in 5 days, everybody in the audience is a trainer, and they will go through the 6 days of early content, like 3 days for administrators, 3 days for developers. And I was like, well, I'm going to ride this wave. I love SQL Server. This is what I've built the tech part of my career on until this point. So I'm going to learn and learn and learn, and then start going out and doing more SQL training. But during this event, the person, Dandy Wen, if anybody knows Dandy, but Dandy was running this event, and he said on Monday, hey, if anybody in the room wants to present a module or two, let me know today what you want to present, and when we get to that part of the course, you come up and teach it. I was the only person that raised his hand. Like 20, 25 trainers in the room, nobody else raised their hand for an opportunity to train. So I'm up there, and I'm talking about SQL CLR. Like, you remember like .NET in SQL? It's going to be the future. So I'm up there talking about SQL CLR, and the person who runs hands-on labs for tech ed came in because he was like the local organizer. He had gotten the facility. So he had basically liaised with the Microsoft certified trainer community to get a free labor force, basically, to help run the hands-on labs for the biggest events in the world. And when I was done with my presentation, he pulled me aside, said, hey, can we talk? And he ripped my presentation apart. Like, he gave a lot of unsolicited, very critical, pedantic feedback, which I, in retrospect, appreciate. But he also said, I want you to come work tech ed for me. So, like, I want you to be in Orlando in 3 months to do this thing. You can be there, right? Yes, I can. So I started working Microsoft conferences. If possible, I would like to save questions for the end, just from a timing perspective. There will be room. So that turned into a conference circuit. It turned into me working more with other Microsoft people and teams. It turned into me having lunch with Bill Gates. Like, bizarrely, I was the only person at the lunch wearing a Man-O-War t-shirt. So I was as surprised as anyone. But from 2003 to 2007-ish, I'm like building data warehousing, ETL, like becoming an MVP on my SQL Server integration services, like really taking the freedom that working for myself enabled. Also, I had the world's coolest, if I do say so myself, business cards with thought and memory, or Hugin and Munin, Odin's two ravens, on the cards. But then I got an offer that I couldn't refuse. Someone that I'd met through these projects at Microsoft said, hey, Matthew, I want you to come do integration services training for me and my team. It's like, can't do it, I'm too busy. It's like, well, tell me what it would take. I'm like, I can't do it, I'm too busy. It's like, no, you're not listening, Matthew. Tell me what your daily rate would be for you to come and do this thing for me and my team. And I quoted him 3 times my daily rate. And he said, is 2 weeks from now okay? Yes, yes it is. And this actually turned into a full-time job that wasn't the job that I needed. So I went to work for ConfigureSoft, which has since been purchased by EMC, which has since been purchased by Dell. But ConfigureSoft was a systems configuration management vendor, like making things like whatever the current version of SCCM is. Like I don't know, I don't follow that side anymore. But if you had 10,000 computers or 10,000 servers and 100,000 workstations, and you needed to know what was installed and how each one was configured, they would do it for you, right? And they were investing really heavily in a BI for IT platform. So using the Microsoft BI stack to pull in data from all of these things and to provide more insights so that if you were the system admin, you were not looking for a needle in a haystack, we were helping you find the things that you needed to focus on. And I took a job with ConfigureSoft, and I became, like overnight, one of their highest paid employees, because I'd already set the expectation that I'm really expensive, right? Like I'm not going to back away from that. But a month or so after I joined, or shortly after I joined, their strategic direction changed. They stopped focused on building this analytics platform and started focusing on getting acquired by EMC. And that basically meant I was the dramatically overpaid appendage that wasn't contributing to any strategic priority. Like the writing was on the wall, the sand was coming through the hourglass. I knew that this wasn't a place that I could stay, but people noticed great work. At this time, there was a group at Microsoft that was looking for a solution to a problem. And this was the learning group at Microsoft. Remember, I started off as a trainer, right? So trainer, consultant, SQL, et cetera. The Microsoft Certified Trainer community, which was hosted on Usenet news groups. I can't even say it anymore. NNTP news groups. If you're old enough to remember that, my back hurts too. But I had always been, in the old days when I was a very active trainer, I'd been a lurker, a passive participant on these news groups. I would go there, but I didn't feel that I had anything to contribute. In the SQL 2005 timeframe, I started being more active and being a constructive, helpful voice in that community. Someone would have a question, I would help them better articulate their question or their problem, often so that they could find the solution that they already had and just hadn't connected the dots. A lot of trainers are kind of bombastic, egocentric people. Like I see it in myself as well, so it's not criticism. But this quiet voice of help was not something that this community had a lot of. And the Microsoft Learning Org, over the last 3 or 4 years, they'd made some decisions that basically meant that the quality of their courseware was in the toilet, or whatever is lower than that. So they'd basically outsourced a lot of things that they should have kept in-house. They were tracking the wrong metrics, so they didn't know how awful things had been. And by the time that there were people with pitchforks and torches organizing tours to Redmond, they knew that they didn't have the culture and the team in-house to solve it. So they brought me in to help turn around the quality of their courseware, working as an internal consultant. All of my peers were directors, and I was like an individual contributor with no one reporting to me. But I was like the ninja going in to help identify problems, propose solutions, and move on to the next one. And the thing that I found here is, like, first of all, it's really hard fitting in at a big company. If you've always been in small companies, like, this is not easy waters to swim in. The other thing that I found was, if you have a great boss that is consistently championing your work, everything is easier, right? It's not always easy, but having a great boss makes everything work better. And having the ability, like having community engagement as part of your job, it enables so much goodness, like the goodness we have here. It's enabled by day-to-day work, including user groups, other communities, like forums, like having a public voice. Don't follow me on Twitter for tech stuff, but having a voice on Twitter where you're part of the ongoing dialogue or whatever community space you find, it makes a huge difference because people can see you and know that you're someone that they want on your team, kind of like Atlanta 2011 Tech Ed. So Tech Ed in Atlanta, I knew that I was looking for a new position. The problems that I came into Microsoft to solve in 2008, I had solved those problems. And I was starting to get bored, and Microsoft has a culture of internal lateral movement. So you come in, you solve your problems, you look for the new position, might be the same team, might be up, might be out. I had Matt Mason, who is a program manager on the integration services team that I knew from my days as an MVP. I had lunch with him, and he said, hey, we're hiring. And I said, hey, I'm looking. And he said, well, it's kind of weird. Like, we're kind of in a weird reorg right now. It's like, I thrive on chaos, I said. If there's chaos and uncertainty, I can make a Matthew-sized shape, or anyway, I can come in and apply me, chaos breeds opportunity, right? And I'll share links on Twitter afterwards, but like there's a blog post where I tell a story of years later. I was interviewing someone to join my team. He wanted to know more about my background. I told him this story, and he looked at me, and I'm about to swear, because this is a verbatim quote. I told him about these days, and he looked at me, and he said, damn, man, you dove into the fucking blender. And I thought it was just me. Like, I had the roughest 18 months of my professional life. I gained 60 pounds. I was drinking half a bottle of hard liquor every night. I was losing my mind because everything that I tried was wrong. Every time that I felt that I found my feet, oh, there's a reorg, and now we're not building this thing. This other team is building this thing. We're trying. There are people that thrive in that environment, but 2012 Matthew was not that person. And I'm going to back up a little. I had moved my entire family, my wife and my 2 young children, from the East Coast to the West Coast, away from everyone and everything that they had ever known for this job. And it was a nightmare. And I kept my head down to do what needed to be done, but I just didn't know. I never figured it out. And the thing that saved me were the connections that I had made on previous teams. So basically, there was an opportunity that came to me when I was looking for opportunities to leave Microsoft, and somebody basically said, like, come help me build this cloud thing. You've been doing these information management things. We've got a new thing that we're working on. I'm keeping an eye on the clock, so I'm not going to drain anything that's on this slide. But basically, for the data catalog days, we stood up Microsoft's first public cloud service with a focus on data governance and information management, and nobody used it. It was not the tool that anybody needed. And the thing that I learned after the fact, like I'm still kind of learning now as Microsoft Purview evolves, is I'd brought in a knife to an artillery fight, right? I came in thinking there was this little thing that needed to be done, and there was this giant thing that no one had done successfully at Microsoft, despite trying dozens of times over decades. So the thing that saved me at the end, and I say save me in a very fundamental, important, significant way, was the fact that people noticed great work, and Casper DeYoung, who is currently one of my peers on the Power BI Cat team, he came to me and said, hey, Matthew, we're hiring. And I'm kind of slow. I didn't clue in on the fact, because I didn't know anything about Power BI. And spoiler, I still don't. But Casper came to me, and he basically said, look, my team, we are the voice of the enterprise customers for the Power BI product org. We don't build features, but we make sure that the team is focused on building the right features and working with customers to make them successful. And I have found a home. Like, never before in my professional life have I been surrounded by so many people with so many different backgrounds and skills and strengths. And Mark Regera, like kudos to you, Mark, who's watching this, the guy that runs the Power BI Cat team, he has a gift for understanding what people like, what they're good at, and what they like what is hard for them, and finding ways for people to do the things that they like and are good at that aligns with the ever-changing mission of the team. And I have never delivered more impact and more value than I have now. And even though I'm learning to be a manager, I have a team of 10 people now, and I don't know what I'm doing as a manager. This is hard for me, but it really feels like I'm in the right place. And I don't know if I've ever said this publicly before, but I was at Microsoft for 8 years before I got promoted. I was hired as a level 63, and I frickin' stayed there. I couldn't figure out what needed to be done, and things kept changing, and I couldn't keep up. I feel like until I landed on this team, I had never really succeeded at Microsoft. And in those last 5 years or so, I've been promoted 3 times. And this comes with a lot more money, a lot more responsibility, and so on and so forth. But I feel like I'm doing what I was meant to do because I'm on a team that values my perspective and my work. There are people, I'm gonna shout out to Patrick, who's sitting in the back here. Like the stuff that is hard for me, Patrick makes it look effortless, right? The things that I do, there is no one else on this team, or maybe inside of Microsoft, that could do the things that I've done because I have built something unique. And a lot of it comes back to having a supportive home where you are able to bring your authentic self. I'm going to tie some of these things together. We've got a couple minutes and then time for Q&A. But when I think about the lessons that I learned from this journey, this is over 25 years of me working in tech, never knowing what I was doing, never knowing where I was going, never having a 1-year or 3-year or 5-year plan, but instead following my passion. I found that the most important things that have helped me succeed on this chaotic personal path, first of all, find a home. If you don't feel that you bring something, the real you brings something unique and valuable to the team, don't go looking for another job today, but that's a red flag. If you're not at home in your work, maybe you need a different home. Maybe you need to look for that next opportunity, or to have a hard conversation with your boss. Everything that makes me successful today, I learned at Phase Drugs. I worked that retail job for 10 years. And I was never recognized, and I was never rewarded, and it wasn't part of any career path that anybody would ever plan, right? I couldn't see beyond the walls of the store. I didn't believe that I could do anything else, and if it weren't for me marrying that wonderful woman and following her to Albuquerque when she was going to get her master's degree, I'd probably be a store manager today, right? So despite that, the things that I learned there, they are what differentiate me from the people that knew that they were going to go to an Ivy League school, that graduated with a master's degree, and had a job waiting for them on day one. This is the thing that makes my magic happen. It's helping old ladies find the thing that they need and mopping up the stuff on the floor. Community has been at the heart of my journey. What do people notice? People notice great work. If you are not in a place where people can see the great work that you are doing, they can't notice it. Community, helping to organize, helping to present, running a blog, being a constructive voice on the community.powerbi.com or whatever community sites you visit, contribute and people notice. This is key. This was the magic that helped me through. This is like the secret sauce or the seasoning that made everything else possible. The other thing is say yes before your fears get in the way and say no. This is me on my 50th birthday. I had just finished my birthday bear pit doing 51-minute fights without a break with a bunch of other people from my longsword club and neighboring clubs. I started a full contact combat sport when I was in my mid-40s. So I learned that people fought with swords, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm gonna do this thing. It's like, I didn't think about the danger. It's like, I knew that I had to do it. When you feel that joy, act. Don't let the fear stop you from acting. Don't be the person that says no to your opportunities. And this is my first day on the CAT team. So the night before, I was like, go to the gym, go to work. So I set out my gym bag, my work shirt. I don't always wear a tie, but I wanted to be fancy. And I had practice that night, right? I am unabashedly me. And this is the comfort to stand in front of a group and share the ups and the downs and the hard parts. I couldn't have done this 10 years ago, but the thing that enables me today is the fact that I bring all of me every day, like the sword stuff, the heavy metal stuff, the foster kitten stuff, the baking, like all of the BS that no one but me really cares about, it's me. And if I try to cut out the stuff that I don't think other people want or need or appreciate, I'm also cutting out the things that enable me to bring what they need. And then the final lesson in my mind is that you have to learn from the good and the bad. Like there has been some awful, awful stuff that I've shared here, like really deeply traumatic. I'm able to tell that story because I've been through it. Like life is hard. I don't talk about the problems I haven't solved yet, right? Like this is the public happy ending face of me. But regardless of whether it's a problem that you fought through and you're on the other side, or the problem that you're in today, adversity is where we learn the most quickly, but you need to let yourself learn from those things. So this is the end of my session. I promised I would save time for Q&A, but we're a minute over. So thank you very, very much. And the gentleman who raised his hand, I want to give you a chance to ask that question because you were very polite. So fire away while I start shutting down.
Sure, no problem. So you